Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we get started, I want to tell you about an absolutely crazy idea that I recently had. You see, every single week on the Becoming Superhuman podcast, we share with you some incredible idea that can change your life, whether that's meditation or the paleo diet or Tai Chi or lucid dreaming. But the thing is, how much do you actually implement in your everyday life? 10%? 20%? And you're not alone. I mean, even I, as the host of the podcast, am lucky if I implement 20 or 30% of what we talk about on this show. Why is that? Well, first off, in order to implement, we need more than a week. We need more like a month or even 2 months. We need community of people supporting us, cheering us on, and we need actual guidance from the experts beyond just a 1-hour podcast. So I had a crazy idea. What if we got everybody together in a members-only group, and then we committed to one another that we were going to take on a new challenge every month? 1 month, we would all commit to lucid dreaming. Another month, we would all commit to improving our willpower. Another month, we might all try to wake up at 5:30 in the morning. So I put this idea out there and we got over 100 people committed and involved. And here's what it looks like. In addition to a regular monthly challenge, we also send out all the gear, all the books, all the whatever that you need to complete that monthly challenge in the mail and in your email. We then have an expert, one of the 200 world-renowned experts that we've had on the show, come into the private group and teach a lesson every single week for a month so that we can actually implement what we're learning. We already have started developing the first challenges. We're working on a lucid dreaming challenge. We're working on a willpower challenge and many, many more. So I want to invite you to come try this out. Join us. There are over 100 of us doing these challenges, and we would love to have you participate with us. So to join this new crazy experiment that we're calling the Becoming Superhuman Mastermind, please visit jle.vi/mastermind. We can't wait to see what you achieve. Greetings, super friends, and welcome to this week's episode. You know, I got a little bit of a bone to pick with you all. There are over 10,000 of you listening to this and only 200 reviews on iTunes. So please take a moment to leave a review on iTunes like this one from Tom 1234566 from the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, who says the title does not lie. 5 stars. Jonathan's podcasts are always interesting, and I make sure to listen to every one. I came across this podcast when getting into yerba mate, and I found his episode about it. Whilst yerba mate ritual has stopped, I haven't missed the podcast since, and I truly believe I live a better life for it with still so much to explore and commit to do. Thank you so much, Tom. I really, really love that review, and I wish that every one of you would leave one just like it. But even if you just leave a 5-star review with the word thanks, we'll accept that as well. On to today's episode. Today we are joined by Tommy Baker. Now, if you haven't heard of Tommy, he is the host of the Resist Average Academy podcast, and he helps dreamers, visionaries, and entrepreneurs bring their dreams to life and create a life that they just can't wait to wake up for. He is the author of UnResolution, The 1% Rule, and The Leap of Your Life, and he helps people live up to their potential through writing, coaching, podcasting, and many, many more things. In this wide-ranging episode, we talk not just about how to resist average and get yourself to the level that you want to, but also where most people fall short, where they get stuck, and some of the things that both he and I have experienced in life that have made us pivot and change and grow and develop. We go really, really deep. We go into biohacking. And though it takes us a little while to get into the conversation itself, I really enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot, and I got a few really, really powerful ideas that I'm actually going to start implementing tomorrow in my journaling routine and in some of the warm-up rituals that I do every single morning. It's amazing to me that after 220 episodes or so, give or take, that I am still learning new things from guests like Mr. Tommy Baker. Mr. Tommy Baker, how are you, man?
Jonathan, I'm doing amazing. Like I said, just got out of an ice bath. So if you feel an extra pulse of energy, it comes from the cold plunge.
Whew, tell me about that. Do you do that every day?
Yeah, that's my aim every single day. And just the benefits are incredible. Even just putting your head in, submerged in cold water, what it does for you, the research is incredible. And obviously got this from people like Wim Hof and Aubrey Marcus and Paul Chek, but it's incredible, man.
What's been the change in your life? I mean, I had Wim on the show. I sometimes do the cold showers. I don't do the full ice bath. So sell me on it.
Yeah. So for me, there's a palpable difference between the days that I do it and the days I don't do it. And maybe it's the psychological take of, hey, I'm choosing to get really uncomfortable. And there's that moment where I'm about to do it, don't really want to do it. And then I overcome that. And that sets the tone later on. If I'm writing something, I get blocked, or I'm on a sales call and, I don't really want to hold that tension. But obviously the physiological ones of just that endorphin release, your body warming up after. I mean, to me, it's the perfect state shift. And sometimes I'll do it in the afternoon when we experience that afternoon slump. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's better than espresso is what I like to say.
Wow. Now, how do you have access to that much ice at the drop of a hat? I mean, what's the logistic part of this?
Well, it's a great question because I'm in Arizona.
Right.
So there's a recovery center here that I'm part of that they have these amazing, cold plunges from anywhere from 41 to 55 degrees. The one I just did was in my pool. So right now it's still really cool in the morning and it's not as cold as the plunge from the recovery center. But as summer comes around, I'll have to do them only in the recovery center.
Wow, that's impressive because that's one of my big things. Like I'll do a cold shower once in a while, but the ice, especially in the desert here in Israel, though I will say I feel the same way about the breathing, the Wim Hof breathing technique, that just it's a complete state change. Like I like to journal while I do it. It's a habit that Ben Hardy got me into. And I noticed like looking over my journal entries, like I start journaling and I'm like, oh, this sucked. And I didn't like this. I could have done this better. And then by the time I finish at the bottom of the page, it's like, you know what? Everything's going to be awesome. I'm doing just fine. Like by the time I go through that breathing exercise, I'm just in a different state of mind for sure.
Absolutely. This past weekend, we did a holotropic breathing or whatever it's called with, set to a meditation. And it's same thing. I mean, that type of breathing, just even a little bit every single day to create that state change. Because small state changes, as we get into these emotional slumps or triggered by something or just, we're in the same environment for too much time. And just those small state shifts are so amazing for opening up our mind again, creativity, productivity, and all those great things.
That's awesome. Now, I guess we should backpedal a second and ask, tell us about you and what you do. What is Resist Average Academy? How'd you get into this? How did you become the type of person who does an ice bath first thing in the morning?
Absolutely. So Resist Average Academy is a platform to really take people from a state of, so I like to think of life and that we can find ourselves in life in any of three stages. One is a state of survival where scarcity is really the way that we operate. We're constantly exhausted. There's never enough. The second one would be a state of comfort. We've achieved a little bit of quote unquote success, but there's nothing on the horizon that's exciting us. Things can seem gray. In our quiet moments, things can feel like something is missing. And then there's a state of thriving where we're in a state of consistent growth. It doesn't mean we avoid challenge. It actually means that we seek the challenge, we create the challenge to get the fulfillment and results. And so what the Academy is really about is transitioning people from either survival into at least a place of breathing and comfort. But mostly the people that I work with, they're in a state of comfort. And I want to get them back in a state of thriving again. And the key word again, because we've all been in a state of thriving, even if we're not there today, and we can get it back. And that's really what I'm passionate about, and specifically helping entrepreneurs go from that comfort to thriving stage again.
That's awesome. What brought you down this path in life?
Yeah, I think it's always out of self-preservation. As a young entrepreneur, getting started, had so much passion and enthusiasm over what I was doing, but I noticed that I was lacking all of the core skill sets. And, acquiring those skill sets took me 10 years. Mm-hmm. And through that process, being mentored by so many great people, being impacted by so many people who had been there and really gaining the skills to marry the passion. I say passion is never enough. Purpose is never enough. Having all of those things is really powerful, but we must marry them with skill acquisition. And to me, there was moments where I thought, what, this isn't for me. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. And it was a BS story, but what I was missing was outside perspective. And so now being able to deliver that outside perspective and get people in states of extreme clarity, get that momentum back, really create that next challenge on the horizon is really what I'm about. But I got into it because I needed it at times. And that really led me down the path of human behavior and neuroscience and really what makes us tick, what creates that moment of decision making where we say, okay, this time I'm changing.
Really cool. Really cool. So tell me a bit more about how people overcome this. I mean, what's stopping most people, right? It's so easy. I always come back to this quote, like a lot of things in life are like dieting. Like we know what we need to do, but we don't do it. So yes. Is this like that? I mean, tell me, what's the secret here? Why aren't we all living our best life?
Absolutely. Well, the slide towards comfort and or survival, it's, by 1,000 small steps, that slide to mediocrity. And, number one is really getting radically honest with ourselves and taking inventory. And I call this non-emotional inventory. But so often we attach emotions and stories and narratives that may or may not be true. And we tend to avoid what's actually happening. So number one is radical honesty. Number two is getting clear about really what we do want. So one, radical honesty is really about where we are. Number two is what we do want. And number three is like, how can we manufacture urgency? Because if there's no urgency, if there's nothing pulling us, and in, everything that I've studied, really, there's two models, right? There's the model of getting away from something we don't want, and there's something being pulled by something that we do want. And so if we can cultivate an environment where we're getting a healthy dose of both, that's what's going to compel us to action. So a really practical thing that I do to create urgency is that if we're in a place, if, I teach this to my clients and people on the podcast, if you're in a place in your life, any of the areas of life that you don't want to be in, just take a moment and use what I call reverse visualization. And so instead of visualizing the life that you do want to live and all of that great stuff, you flip the script and you take yourself 3 or 5 years down the line. Now I get this is very intentional. This is not just like, closing your eyes for 10 seconds. I go deep on this, and we go 3 to 5 years down the line. You haven't made that decision you needed to make. You haven't made that key hire. You haven't, launched the business or whatever it is, whatever that thing is that we know we have to do from part one, which is radical honesty. What does that feel like? And now let's take us through the last 3 years of opportunity cost of saying no to that, of knowing that we had to do something. And so we can use a future regret, future pain to make a decision easier today and get us in a place of action.
Wow. Really, really cool. I found in my experience that there's the really fine line, right? There is this kind of parabola, if you will. And in the middle, you have just the right amount of ambition and drive and focus. And on the far left, you have no ambition, just beyond like, oh, I'm pretty happy with what I have. Like, I don't care. And on the far right, you have, I'm never happy with what I have. And I found that there is this like happy medium. I call it the difference between toxic and healthy ambition, right? When you cross over the top of that mountain, that normal distribution, if you will, and you go into the other territory, now you're in this unhealthy. Talk to me a bit about that.
Well, it's a great point, Jonathan. I mean, right here in my bookshelf, I have the Tiger Woods recent biography, or I got the Andre Agassi one. Those are examples of, and a lot of that has to do with the way they were brought up by their fathers, but those are examples of what you're talking about. That's like, it's almost like in fitness, and I hope this makes sense. There's healthy. There's like the healthy lifestyle, and then there's fitness, which is more performance-based. As you continue to go on the path of fitness towards performance, let's just say Tour de France people, maybe CrossFit Games athletes, Olympians, you're not getting healthier. You're actually getting less healthy as you go on towards that state. But often that's required to be world-class. So very similar to what you talked about. So yes, there is a place where, to me, it's like if we don't have that deep self-awareness, we haven't done some of that inner work, we can be chasing this intense toxic ambition to a place that actually has the law of diminishing returns and leaves us in a place where we're so obsessed with achievement, so focused on achievement, that when we get there, we feel hollow, we feel empty, we need to fill that void. So to me, there's really a fine line of that internal work married with the external work, having a real deep-rooted why. If we study some of these world-class athletes, their why wasn't coming from a compelling place. It was coming from a deep, deep place of lack, deep void of self-worth. And for those two athletes in particular, it came from their father figures in their life. So it's a fine line, man. It's a fine line. And I think that's one of the exciting parts of this journey. It's like, what makes Jonathan tick? What makes Tommy tick? What makes all the people that you've interviewed on the podcast tick? And when does the thing that makes us great, when does that become a detriment? And that's where the power of perspective comes in, because as we achieve, as we grow, our blind spots get smaller, right? Early on, it's very easy to see our blind spots, but as we grow, they get really, really small, but they also become 10 times more costly.
Yep. Success traps are harder to get out of than failure traps, as Joe Polish likes to say. And I really liked what you said, Tommy, about just kind of like knowing this balance and having to do the self-work and the why. Because, you know, we've been hosting this mastermind group where we bring in a top thought leader such as yourself every month, and they lead on whatever it is that they do. And we go deeper than we do in the podcast. Like we did 1 month with Ariel Garten on meditation. We did a full month with Nick Littlehales, the world's top sleep coach, on sleep. We did stuff with Ben Hardy. We did alcohol and sugar elimination. And what's blown my mind over the last 6 months since I've been doing this is you would think every challenge would start differently. It's like, okay, sleep, we got to do this, or willpower, we got to do this. Or right now, we just finished a lucid dreaming challenge, which was really awesome with Charlie Morley. And you would think that every challenge would start completely differently because the subject is completely different. But when you get people at this level of expertise in coaching, training, teaching, every single one of them starts the same way. And it's the same way that I start my courses, which is why. It's like, doesn't matter if you want to improve your sleep or you want to, resist average or you want to give up alcohol. You got to connect so deeply to that why. And that just comes up every single time that it blows my mind. In fact, I fashioned a whole productivity webinar all around this concept of like the why behind productivity. And I think it's so powerful.
And I love that you said that, because let's just say with something like productivity, people are always looking for the next tactic, the next hack, the next system, and they're going to go on searching forever. And I've done that, because if the why isn't there, to me, procrastination is a feedback mechanism that lets us know that we haven't really pulled at the right strings of our why. Because once we do, then whatever tactic, whatever system we use is going to work. So I love that, because we have to start there. And it's so cliche, right? Start with why. But if we don't start there, then we might see some incremental results, but we're not going to stay consistent. We're not going to endure when it starts to get hard, when we start to face adversity, when it becomes really challenging. If we don't have something deeper, a deeper reason why we're even starting in the first place.
Yeah. And, I realized, I'm not sure why this surprised me so much, because I looked at my own work and I just finished writing another book about learning, right? And about the way the adult brain works as opposed to an unmature brain. And it's that, right? Like adult brains need to know why they're doing something if we're going to do it. Otherwise, our neurons just shut down. Like we don't light up the way that we would if it's like, this is why I'm doing this. And more specifically, this is how I'm going to use whatever it is that I'm practicing, learning, training, doing. It's just their neurochemistry is completely different in someone who knows why they're doing what they're doing at a deep level. And I love what you said, like I go deep with this, right? That level of depth that like the minute I learn this, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to help this person in this way, and going really, really deep into it makes all the difference.
And I love that, because it starts to take something that's might, obviously start as a selfish endeavor. We want to gain a skill, we want to do something. And then, but we're going to use it to do this, right? And again, some of that might be a selfish endeavor, something that we're going to gain. But what you just said there is like, we're going to help somebody do this. We're going to be able to impact these type of people. And when we have that, again, procrastination, one of the things that people have said about me is that I am a prolific content creator in terms of the volume that I create. So people ask me like, so how you always have so much content? And I say, well, I don't make it about me. I close my eyes, I take a moment, I say, okay, what is one person out there? What are they actually struggling with in this moment? What is going on inside of their brain, before the head hits the pillow? And when we think about someone outside of ourselves, stepping into that, overcoming procrastination, like that's easy, right? And when we focus externally, when we've done the internal work and we also focus on a reason externally, to me, that's the best of both worlds.
That's really awesome. So what's driving you? I mean, what's the why? You shared a little bit with us, but like, what's your big motivation for doing all the work and creating all the content that you do?
Yeah, I'd say at a level, it's from being in a place of survival and thinking I was going to make it. It's from being in a place of comfort and looking around and asking myself, like, is this it? Is this all there is? And living in those two worlds and then getting to a place of complete thriving and saying, you know what? Most of the world lives in either survival or comfort. And to me, like, for example, I just got a new book that's coming out tomorrow, and it sounds so cliche again, but if one person is, if I can create one spark in one person to actually move from survival to comfort or comfort to thriving, which is where I want to get everybody, I've done enough. And that really drives me every single day, because I've been there and I don't want to go back there. I've been in a place where I was lacking any type of purpose. I was lacking any type of passion. I was in relationships that were toxic. I didn't have a great relationship with myself. And that seems like a different world. And I know there's a lot of people out there, and it can seem like there's no way out, and it can seem very lonely. And so I want to make sure that no matter what, and these are all stages and it's all relative to where we are, because somebody can achieve a lot of success, but still internally feel empty. And I want to help that person too. And so that's really my deep-rooted why. A practical tip for somebody listening, I just journal about this, like you go going back to the journal, I journal about this every single day. So I'll ask, what is my why today? And again, the same patterns and themes are going to come up, but by putting in the reps every single day shifts my awareness and also allows me to recognize some of the patterns, some of the languages, some of the things that are constantly coming up. And that really helps me step in a place of clarity and power every single day.
That's a really good tip that's actually never come up. I feel like a lot of times how many times can guests talk about the importance of sleep, nutrition, and meditation, right? It's like the same things come up, but that one's never come up. And I really like that. Like I said, Ben Hardy really convinced me recently, very recently, to finally start journaling. And I've noticed the difference in gratitude journaling. Like you said, a measurable, observable difference in the quality of my life. I love that idea of journaling your why every day, because once again, this is like neuroplasticity stuff. And you can tell, Tommy, I look at the whole world through like what's happening in my brain, which is why lucid dreaming is so fascinating to me. But the neuroplasticity around, one of the things Ben Hardy drove home when he talked on the show is we are what we repeatedly do, in a very literal sense. Like, our idea of who we are does not come from our one-time behavior or the way that we talk. It actually is like, well, I did this yesterday and I did this. I ate the chocolate bar yesterday and the day before and the day before that and the day before that. So I'm a weak person who eats shitty food. But and it's not 21 days, but it's a pretty short amount of time, you get up at 6 a.m., pretty soon you start to believe that you're the kind of person who gets up at 6 a.m. And I've experienced this. So journaling every single day on like, this is my why, all of a sudden you become the kind of person who deeply connects to their why, and you're getting in the reps and you're signaling to your brain, like, this is what matters to me. I'm going to do that tomorrow in my journal entry.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. And just like you said, it really, to me, it just tunes our compass every morning. And so if we have that compass, that North Star that's guiding us, well, decision-making becomes easy, right? It becomes easy to, if somebody invites us for coffee, is this a yes or a no relative to my why? Or a podcast or a business opportunity or a partnership or somebody that we want to bring on. And at the end of the day, what's going to be our lives? A culmination of thousands and thousands of micro, medium, and big decisions. And if we have that compass, that to me really helps, because I find that people do this, people who are somewhat into this will do this, maybe once a quarter. People who are really into this will do this once a week. But to me, like world-class status, you just do it every single day.
I really like that. All right. What other good stuff you got?
Well, I'll give you another one on journaling because I'm staring at it right now. So another one that I really like to do is just pick a intention phrase for the day and write it and fill the whole sheet of the journal. So the one that I have today is, it's going to sound very law of attraction, but just hear me out here. It's, I attract abundance and opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so I have a whole journal page with that word. And going back to what you just said, that repetition, there's clear moments when I'm writing this and I'm halfway in and I'm like, okay, hands getting a little tired. This is a little boring. I'm fighting that resistance and then overcoming that with the addition of the reps. I mean, it's a really powerful practice. So this is something that I've done for many years. If you look at my Instagram, I'm constantly posting these type of phrases. But again, it really tunes the compass. And just like you said, and you know much more about this than I do, but that neuroplasticity. Okay, if I write, I attract abundance and opportunity, I don't know, maybe 400 times here. I don't know exactly. I step out into the world just a little bit differently, So that's another one of my favorites, just repeating the same intentional phrase for the day over and over and over again.
I totally buy it. I've talked on the show quite a bit about how I found my now wife and the process that I had to go through and the self-work that I had to do. And one of the most impactful exercises in that whole experience was having to write like 100 plus times things that altered my beliefs. I mean, one of my beliefs that I didn't know I had, but that was deep down there. When you do the work, you figure out on a subconscious level, you don't believe that you deserve to be in a healthy, loving relationship. And I think, by the way, this is true for more people than you would imagine. On some level, some aspect of their childhood or past relationships has convinced them that I only deserve this much. And I think anyone who's in an abusive relationship believes fundamentally at some level that they deserve it. And so writing out like I deserve love and affection 100 plus times a day made a huge difference in the way that I see myself. And you're right. It sounds so cliche. It sounds so woo-woo, but that stuff sinks in,
Yeah, and that's the rewiring work that's really going to change our behavior. Another one of my favorite practices is sensory deprivation and flow tank. And in the flow tank, I'll do some really deep meditations. And again, just being in that state of malleability where we're very suggestive. None of our senses there's no inputs. It's just we're in a state of openness. That's how we begin to rewire. There was a period in my life where I was dabbling in this type of material, Jonathan, and I wasn't seeing the results. And I say, when people don't see the results when they're studying powerful material, very rarely does it have to do with the material. It has to do with the intention and attention that we place it. Another thing that I did when none of this was quote unquote working because I wasn't working it, I said, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to focus on one piece of material and I'm going to play it every single night. And obviously at night, brainwaves start to slow down. We're more suggestive. And I did 476 straight nights of listening to the same audio because why? I wanted to rewire my subconscious. And what we're talking about here with the writing, with the reps is exactly that. Can we rewire deep parts of us so when we actually step out and we consciously want to do something, we have a foundation that's already built in? And as you know, when our foundation isn't there, when the subconscious is telling us, I don't deserve to be in a worthy relationship, I don't deserve to have $1 million business, I don't deserve whatever it is, we're going to revert back. All of the tactics and hacks can work for a little while, and we may see incremental results or be a unicorn, but we're going to revert back to, that core belief and what we really think we're capable of.
Yeah. Now, do you think people can really, I guess we've answered the question with the repeating stuff, but what are some of the ways that we can change the way that we believe it? The way that we show up, what we believe we're worth, because it sounds like ultimately that's what we're getting at, right? Is like, if you want to resist average and you want to be the best possible version of yourself, you have to first believe that that's possible, or you're just going to sink back in to the quicksand of not showing up at the gym, of eating crappy food, of, watching Netflix instead of reading books. All of which, by the way, I'm guilty of doing on occasions. That's why we call the show Becoming Superhuman.
There we go.
We are changing the name eventually, but it's still going to be something along those lines. Not, I'm now superhuman, listen to me. What can people do? How do we change these beliefs?
Yeah, start simple, start small, start with one thing a day. Another great thing that I like to do is, again, where our attention goes, where our focus goes is really going to determine, our ability to grow and expand. And, one of the things that I do at the end of the day is I just write down 7 wins every single day. So guaranteed this podcast is going to be on the 7 wins at the end of the day.
Awesome.
Why do I do this? Right? Because I want to, again, it's so easy to focus on what we don't have, what's not working, what's missing. And so people will say, Tommy, I had a terrible day. I can't find 7 wins. And I say, that's exactly why you're in the place you're in, because you're not opening your awareness to the moments that were powerful within the day. And I don't care how difficult of a day we may have had, we can find 7 wins. We can have, that smile with the cashier that we had, the conversation with an employee. All of that stuff. And so that's just a really simple way to start increasing that worthiness by focusing on, okay, I am making progress. Even if it seems small and inconsequential, I'm still willing to own it. And part of worthiness is receiving. For years, I was I still am like a nonstop giver. Give. I call this the myth of value in entrepreneurship. They say if you just give enough value, then you'll be all set. And I actually don't believe that, because if we're not open to receive value back based on our worthiness, then we're not going to be in that place. And I've been there. And so part of receiving is being able to own our wins. It's being able to, put ourselves out there courageously. If we are going to work with a client, like putting out the offer that we know is right based on our expertise and not doing a lowball offer, all of this stuff. So very simply, it would be pick one of the practices that we've talked about so far. And that could be celebrating the wins. That could be the reps. Hopefully a couple of them. That'd be awesome. Stick with them for the next 90 days. And then also just be aware, like, where are you self-sabotaging in a way? Where are you stopping yourself? Where are you making a lowball offer when you know you should make the right one? Where are you not receiving fully? And when we do that, that's when we really start to believe that these things that we're worthy of these things, that we're possible. And again, there's levels of that. And to me, that's the fun in this game.
I really like that. Now, I want to get to your book and make sure we have time to talk about that. But first, I want to ask, what are some of the other things that you do? I mean, clearly you do a lot of them. So I feel like we could spend some time on this. Other things you do to keep yourself performing at a high level.
Okay, I'll share one that's might not be so common. So every couple of weeks, I visit a cemetery. And the reason why, Jonathan, is it reminds me what really matters. Right. And so it's a very meditative practice. And I walk around, 30 minutes, and I'm here in Arizona. We have the most beautiful sunset. So usually I'll go when there's at the end of the day at sunset, and I'll just soak in the energy. And it'll just remind me, okay, am I focusing on the things that matter? Am I truly on the right path? Am I telling the people in my life how I really feel when I feel it, not waiting for something? Again, am I waiting to make a decision that I don't know if I'm going to have the time to create? And so that's one of my favorite practices. It also goes along with one of my favorite texts of all time, which is Seneca on the Shortness of Life, written 2,000 years ago, about the same concept, right? That we have enough time, that life is not short, that we have enough to live a full life. It's just what we do with that. So that's a practice that's a little bit unconventional, but if you do it right, you really, to me, the rest of the 2 weeks, I'm just really grounded. Like I'm coming from, I have urgency, but it's not that crazy urgency of like, hyped up motivation. Like I got to go, 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 go. It's like, no, I have urgency because I know that yes, our time here is limited, but I can still make a really deep impact if I make the right decisions and I put myself out there consistently over and over again.
Very cool. And definitely one that we haven't heard before on the show. You did mention a book. I want to ask, what are some of your top most impactful books? And then I do want to get into speaking about yours.
Yeah, so I got a crazy bookshelf right here. So a couple essays that have transformed my life. Seneca on the Shortness of Life, to really just rapture, to really live a life, written 2,000 years ago. It's never been more applicable than it is today. Ralph Waldo Emerson, Self-Reliance. I mean, that's just game changer. Those are some of the classics. A recent great book that I read, just because it's right here, is by one of my favorites, by Cal Newport, called Digital Minimalism, which has really kind of shifted my mind around my personal addiction of technology. And then Seth Godin's The Dip, which I just reread again, which is about that moment where we're taking on any project or business, and it's after the honeymoon period of starting, and we're in that dip place. And if we can persist long enough, we'll get to world class, or sometimes we have to quit that thing. So those are some of the ones that come up in some of my favorites.
Really, really good. Now, tell me about your book, because, there's a lot of books out there for people to unleash the power within and awaken the giant and be their best selves. What was missing out there that you had to write a book? I'm going to ask it the hard way.
No, you're absolutely right. I always say, hey, there's 650,000 podcasts. The books released every single year are just insane. This book is about, it covers some of the topics that we spoke about. That one decision that we've been putting off that we know we have to make, and that every second that passes, we lose the enthusiasm or the capability of bringing it to life. And so when I work with people, when I have conversations with people, they're not lacking moments of clarity or moments of breakthrough, even if they say they are. When we get real, there's these moments, and the moments might come really during inconsequential times. It might come, during the business trip travel when we're finally have some perspective, or we're looking out the window and we're thinking about life. It might come during the early mornings, before the kids get up. But there's some clarity around what we have to do, but then we wait. And again, every time we wait, that fear starts to take over. We talk ourselves out of it. If you're someone who's logical, you're going to say, hey, you need more research. You need more P&Ls. You need more spreadsheets. Maybe you're like a spiritual person. Hey, you need to go meditate that on a little bit more. Either way, fear's going to find a way because it knows us really well. And so this book was about, okay, let's get really clear about that. And let's honor that clarity by making it real as fast as humanly possible. That's not like making some insane transformation tomorrow. It's about making it real, taking it out of our heads and putting it out into the real world and creating that momentum. So the book's called The Leap of Your Life. And again, sometimes we need to leap in our physicality. Sometimes we need to take a physical challenge on because we've become stagnant in our bodies. Many times we need to take a business, career, entrepreneurship leap, launch that podcast, do that thing that we've been putting off. Sometimes we need, like yours was a relationship leap, right? I was listening to your story about 9 years of being single, ready for that relationship leap. And then the last one is a spiritual leap. And that's, taking the time to disconnect, to reconnect is what I call it, to really focus on what matters. And so the book was created for that person that knows that there's something out there that they've been waiting to make, and that every time they wait, the chances of them waking up with regret are so much higher. And that's a feeling that we've all experienced, but we don't have to experience.
Really fantastic. And yeah, we've certainly all felt it. One of the recurring themes that I like to remind people on the show is we don't have it all figured out. Those of us on this side of the speaker and microphone setup. And this is why we do this stuff, because we've been through it.
Absolutely.
And, a recurring theme is, you said, it comes from self-need. Almost every thought leader I meet is solving their own problem and scratching their own itch. And that's why they're really, really good at scratching that itch for other people.
Yeah. And that's why you can be, again, going back to the why, that's why we can be very purposeful with it. We go so deep on it, because guess what? We need to make sure that we've overcome that problem and are continuing to do it, which is what you said, right? This is a daily journey and a daily process. Totally.
Now, we love to assign homework, Tommy. So I would love if you could give us, you gave us some really good stuff with journaling and just, I'm going to be writing down my 7 wins, as well as what is my why every single day, whether that changes or not. But what's some other homework that we could give people? Maybe an exercise from the book, or just something you do with your clients?
Absolutely. Well, one of my favorite ones is just regaining back control of our mornings. And, one of the tips in the book is, again, how long can you stretch out airplane mode in the morning? Right. And again, super simple, but how long can you stretch it out? And so for me, I aim for 2 hours of airplane mode every single morning. That just really helps me with these practices, right? Because I know the moment that I start going to that phone and I'm journaling, hey, the depth of that journaling, it's basically done. So that's a big one. And then the second one is one around our language. And in my programs, we have a rule. It's called no weak language. And so things like trying, things like maybe, things like we'll see, things like I guess, all of that stuff, there's no clarity for anybody. But most importantly, there's no clarity for ourselves, right? And in my programs, I said, I'm part of it. It's like we call each other out. You call me out if I'm doing that, right? And so that's another tip. Like, maybe with your significant other or coworker or somebody in your organization, like call each other out when there's weak language. Why? Because language represents our deeply held beliefs, but it also lets us off the hook from commitments. And when we use things like trying, we're actually pushing stuff further away and we're giving ourselves an out. And a lot of times we're giving ourselves an out with things that actually do matter to us, right? But we're not willing to get really, really clear and step over the ledge of just like interested, I want this, to like, no. I'm deeply committed to this. So those two would be 2 practices, 2 homework, and also the stuff like the 7 wins and the journaling that you could start implementing. But whichever one connected with you the most, whichever one you feel like, oh, that one is the one that I need, go all in on that one for the next 90 days and really immerse yourself in it, because you're gonna see the benefits.
Really fantastic. Really, really good stuff for people to choose from. And we will obviously put all of this in the show notes, as well as all the things that we've mentioned. Now, I understand your book is coming out this week. We're going to time this episode so that it comes out way ahead of the queue and everything. Tell people where they can pick it up and why they should pick it up.
I somersaulted the queue. Thanks so much.
Yep.
So it's called The Leap of Your Life. And it's out by the time this is recorded. And you can find that really at any major bookseller, or you can head over to leapofyourlife.com. That has some bonuses I'm doing on there as well. And the subtitle is How to Redefine Risk, Quit Waiting for Someday, and Live Boldly.
Awesome. Now, where can people reach you if they want to get in touch with you, learn more about what you are doing?
Absolutely. Thank you. That's resistaverageacademy.com. And again, we've had some mutual guests that have been on both of our shows. And if you enjoy deep conversations like this about performance, around mindset, about elevating every part of your life to a state of thriving, that's resistaverageacademy.com.
Fantastic. Tommy, absolute pleasure chatting with you. And I do want to ask you one last question before I let you go, which is if people take away one big message from this episode and they carry it with them for the rest of their lives, what would you hope for that to be?
Yeah, the number one message is you're more capable than you think, and you're never going to feel fully ready. So whatever that thing that's been gnawing at you, whatever the decision that you've been wanting to make or some bold, courageous move that you've been wanting to make it real right now, because we don't know how much time we have left here. And today is the day that you could step into it.
I love it. Tommy, it's been a real pleasure. Let's keep in touch, my friend.
Jonathan, you're a rock star, man. Keep becoming superhuman, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care. All right, super friends, that is all we have for you today. But I hope you guys really enjoyed the show, and I hope you learned a ton of actionable information, tips, advice that will help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If you've enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or drop us a quick little note on the Twitter machine at GoSuperhuman. Also, if you have any ideas for anyone out there who you would love to see on the show, we always love to hear your recommendations. You can submit on our website, or you can just drop us an email and let us know. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.